Berlin, autumn 1932. The last sunny days before winter. The people get up, go to work, stroll along the street, sit outside cafes, go to the cinema, or perhaps to the cabaret.
Hast du schon Berlin bei Nacht gesehen? Mensch, Berlin bei Nacht ist wunderschön. Pleite sind wir außerdem, trotzdem wollen wir bummeln gehen und uns mal Berlin bei Nacht besehen. Komm, mein Freund,
But 1 in 3 people is unemployed. They live in tenements or shanties, and they are hungry. Street battles are a daily occurrence. Political murders are part of everyday life. The country is divided. At the Reichstag elections in November, the National Socialists under Adolf Hitler become the strongest party. They and the Communists under Ernst Thälmann make up the majority in the Reichstag. A stable government cannot be formed. In December, Kurt von Schleicher becomes Reichschancellor without a majority and with little backing. In Berlin, the street battles intensify, the cracks deepen. The new year has to bring a decision. It is a year we know about through diaries and letters, photographs and films. New Year's Eve is fast approaching.
Die Nacht war vollständig ruhig. Ich hatte wider Erwarten fast gar
It
nichts
was a
zu
very
tun.
quiet night. Surprisingly, I had almost nothing to do. At around 10, a former hospital clerk named Elter was admitted.
Er kam in gebückter Haltung
He
und
was
klagte.
doubled over and complaining of severe pains in the appendix region. The weather was dry but quite cold. No snow.
Die Neujahrsempfänge beim
The
Reichspräsidenten
President's New Year reception proceeded in the customary way as it has for years.
Aufziehen der Wache,
Presidential guard drill, diplomatic corps in attendance, public appearance of the government, speeches and responses.
Gott hat Deutschland schon oft aus tiefer Not errettet. Er wird uns auch jetzt nicht verlassen. Und nun wünsche ich dem deutschen Volke ein gesegnetes neues Jahr.
tüchtige Krampfanfälle und Erna ging
Severe
heftige
cramps,
Zahnschmerzen.
and my little Erna had toothache, so we went to bed on New Year's Day at 7 p.m. and spent the whole night whimpering at one another.
Heute ging Erna zum Zahnarzt.
Today, Erna went to the dentist. She returned home very satisfied with the meticulous treatment and almost free from pain. Her treatment is supposed to continue tomorrow.
When I was in Charlottenstrasse today at 5, I heard people sing. They were workers on their way to a communist rally. I saw almost only young people. 80% were under 30, marked by bitterness and frustration. Their clothes and their emaciated faces suggested that most of them were unemployed. Their leader gave 3 cheers for the Red Front. Every voice and every fist was raised 3 times in a row. An unsettling factor is the number of political murders. The 5th political murder since New Year's was reported from Breslau. Fights in Hamburg, Erfurt, and Aachen were also reported.
Mein Dienst im Krankenhaus verläuft so. Morgens gegen
My work at the
9:00.
hospital proceeds as follows. In the morning at 8:45, I go to the ward. Then I go to the outpatients clinic to sign some paperwork.
Heute habe ich so 25.
I have around 25 to 40 patients to examine each day. Sometimes it's eczema, sometimes gonorrhea, sometimes syphilis.
Um 8 traf ich Lilly.
At 8, I met up with Lily. We went to Aschinger. And then the usual. She wanted cigarettes, ate a sausage, drank beer. All at my expense, of course.
Und trotzdem, als ich mehrere Biere
And
getrunken
yet,
hatte,
after I had drunk several beers at around 11, we still went to our old local in Steinmetzstraße. When I think about it, it all seems like a big mistake.
Berlin, dicke Luft. Wir fahren zum Bülowplatz.
Trouble is brewing in Berlin. We went to Bülowplatz.
Die Straße wimmelt vom Mob und
The streets were overrun by communist rabble, dangerous to drive through there, but all went well. The police made sure no one could shoot at us from the windows.
Punkt 2 Uhr trifft Hitler ein.
At exactly 2 p.m., Hitler arrived. Our SA marched in front of Karl Liebknecht House, a splendid sight. Terrible loss of face for the communists. Bülowplatz is ours.
I ask myself whether the Nazis could be satisfied. Their 15,000 men were chased away to the four winds without the protection of 16,000 policemen, of armored vehicles and machine guns. At Alexanderplatz, the streets were blocked by counter-demonstrators. It was pure luck that the day didn't end in a bloodbath. 2 people were killed. Over 60 were injured.
Grad Kälte zeigt heute unser Barometer.
Our barometer by the window was showing minus 18 degrees today. How cold must it be outside? I hope Erna's little nose didn't freeze when she was waiting at the tram stop.
Gott wird das tapfere Mädchen schützen.
God will protect my brave little girl.
We went to 132 Ackerstraße. The huge building included a number of narrow backyards and was 5 stories high. In the second backyard, we went up the stairs to one of the apartments. I looked at the walls. There was hardly a centimeter that wasn't cracked or punctured. The walls were damp or rancid. Even the woodwork of the windows was moldy and was swollen from the dampness.
Dr. Hess stellte einen Patienten mit Verdacht auf TBC.
Dr. Hess presented a patient with suspected tuberculosis. He is 52 years old, has lost a great deal of weight recently, night sweats and coughing up blood. The X-ray showed a lung tumor, probably cancerous.
Um 8:30 traf ich mich bei Aschinger mit Lilly.
At 8:30, I met Lily at Aschinger.
Sie hatte ein Glas Bier vor sich.
She had a glass of beer in front of her, had already eaten, and was smoking her 6th cigarette. Our conversation was dull. She was angry that I didn't pay for her. We parted very coolly.
Mit Hitler essen.
Meal with Hitler, very political. Hitler remarkable as ever. We went to see the film The Rebel again. I am awestruck once more. What a great film.
Die Bayern sind Deutsche wie mir. Und wenn wir gegen sie gehen, geht Bruder gegen Bruder. Wir Deutsche müssen aufhören, uns gegenseitig die Schädel einzuschlagen. Wir müssen zusammenhalten, sag ich, und uns gegen unseren wahren Feind wenden.
In the film's climax, French soldiers invade Tyrol. Farmers throw huge piles of rocks and wood on them. Bang, bang, crash. portion of the audience wildly cheered as the French were massacred. There was a big rush in front of the Ufer Palast. The Ufer, like so many other publishers and newspapers, belongs to Alfred Hugenberg, the leader of the German National People's Party.
Meine Damen und Herren, es ist niemals mein Ehrgeiz gewesen, ein Redner zu sein.
The Hugenberg Party still hoped to form a government with Hitler, but the price seemed to be high. Many people are plotting against Schleicher.
Empfang beim französischen Botschafter.
A reception with the French ambassador François Poncet, jostling crowds. Schleicher's imminent fall was the topic on everyone's lips. It's an orgy of backroom politics.
In the evening, Tempo published a sensational story. A new government will be formed with Hitler, von Papen, and Hugenberg. I called friends to hear their opinion. One said that Tempo was just being sensationalist and that I shouldn't pay them any attention.
Schleicher gestürzt.
Schleicher has been toppled.
Mich überfällt ein Gefühl.
I'm overcome with waves of nausea at the thought of those notorious jackasses and chancers being back in government.
Something was brewing. Hugenberg spoke out for a cabinet with Hitler. What does that mean?
Abends Presseball. The annual press ball in the evening. Lots of beautiful, elegant women.
Ich musste den Presseball für meine Zeitung besuchen.
I had to attend the press ball on behalf of my newspaper. Who flirted with whom? Who held forth? Who accompanied whom? Who sat with whom?
Das ist es, was die Leser am
That's what the readers want to know the next morning.
Die Stimmung war die merkwürdigste, die ich je erlebt habe.
It was the strangest atmosphere I've ever experienced. Everyone sensed what was in the air. No one wanted to believe it was true.
Die Regierungsloge, sonst
The government box, which at these events is usually full of ministers, state secretaries, diplomats, was empty.
Es ist bedeutend wärmer geworden. -1 Grad.
It has got much warmer. Only -1 today, light snowfall.
Augenblicklich herrscht eine große.
At the moment, we have a serious flu epidemic. The hospital is overcrowded. Internal medicine has borrowed wards from us and the surgical department. They don't know where to put all their patients.
Das Erna-Kind kam gestern fiebernd heim.
Little Erna came home with a fever yesterday. She has been coughing and spluttering for weeks.
Das unheilvolle Warten.
All that miserable waiting around at tram stops and the sudden change in weather have affected the poor girl terribly.
SPD und Eiserne Front.
The Social Democrats and the Iron Front held a demonstration in the Lustgarten. More than 100,000 people, countless red flags.
Vor der Schlossfront ein großes rotes
In front of the palace, a large red banner. Berlin stays red.
Der SPD-Reichstagsabgeordnete.
The Social Democrat MP Künstler held a speech.
Kommunisten habe ich nicht gesehen.
I didn't see any communists, although they had intended to demonstrate there too. A great seething crowd.
Es scheint ein Kabinett Papen.
It seems Papen or Hitler will form a cabinet. A slight bout of the flu, which I'm fighting with alcohol and sleep. Germany, what will become of you?
Im Zeitungshändler an der Ecke.
The newspaper seller on the corner has the afternoon edition torn from his hands. The headline accompanies me the short distance home, up 2 flights of stairs, and lies before me on the table. Adolf Hitler is Reichschancellor.
Das Kabinett ist überstürzt gebildet worden.
The cabinet has been hastily put together.
Hitler ist mit Dr.
Hitler is there with Dr. Fricking Göring, but Hugenberg, Papen, and Defense Minister Blumberg are present to keep him in check.
Also keine nationalsozialistische.
So it is neither a national socialist nor a revolutionary government, although it bears Hitler's name. It's not a Third Reich, barely even a 2.5 Reich.
Faschingsstimmung. SA und SS-Trupps.
Carnival atmosphere. SA and SS troops in uniformed Stahlhelm patrol the streets.
Auf den Bürgersteigen staunend.
Spectators throng the pavements. In and around the Hotel Kaiserhof was one big party. The whole square was full of Gawkers.
An der alten Reichskanzlei stand hinter geschlossenen.
At the old Reich Chancellery, behind closed windows, standing erect like a statue hewn from marble, was Reich President von Hindenburg.
Sah ganz fabelhaft aus.
He looked magnificent. 2 buildings down, Adolf Hitler greeted the cheering masses with the fascist salute.
Es war ein erhebender Anblick.
It was an uplifting sight, the whole of Berlin on its feet, everyone inflamed by nationalist fervor. Our fatherland.
Ce sont des images et des gestes qu'aucun photographe n'a immortalisés.
Images and gestures that no photographer captures.
Lorsque les chemises bleues.
Men and women who avert their eyes when the brown uniforms pass by. Who hurry home and disappear indoors. All those who find it hard to conceal their fury, their powerlessness, their pain or their fear.
Des larmes coulent sur le.
A young girl has tears pouring down her face. Bystanders move away.
After the torchlight procession, 2 people were killed. SA Sturmführer Maikowski and a police officer.
Die Frühschicht der Siemens-Werke fährt zur Arbeit.
Thousands of Siemens workers travel to the factory for the early shift. The railway carriage smells of sweat and cold smoke.
Mit verschlafenen Gesichtern sitzen
People sit bleary-eyed on the seats. Some of them hang their heads. We thrust flyers into everybody's hand. No one argues. No one seems to get het up.
Sie nehmen uns die Flugblätter stumm ab.
They take the flyers from us wordlessly. Some people read them, most put them straight in their pocket.
Hitler steht an der Spitze einer Regierung, die wir bekämpfen können.
Hitler heads a government that we can and must fight. But after all, it is a constitutionally legitimate government. If we organize a general strike now, the government will do everything it can to make us incapable of action.
Wir haben den Faschismus von der Macht.
We tried to stop the fascists coming to power, and now we have to drive them out of power.
Le paysage urbain est dominé par les
The streets are flooded with brown SA uniforms.
De nombreux civils portent l'insigne.
Countless civilians wear a swastika badge on their lapel, or have at least donned a brown shirt.
Meine Patienten reden von nichts
My patients speak of nothing else. Many of them are filled with joy. Many of them look worried. They agree on one thing only. Everything will be different now. I hear how they believe in him, or want to believe in him, ready to serve him.
Reichstag ist aufgelöst.
The Reichstag has been dissolved. New elections are to take place on the 5th of March.
Die Regierung hat die kommunistische
The
Demonstration.
government has banned the communist demonstration this Friday and the Social Democratic Party demonstration in the Lustgarten on Sunday.
Die kommandierenden Generale und commanding generals and station commanders have been summoned to Berlin to meet Hitler in person.
Ich war ihm vor dem Essen vorgestellt
I was
worden.
introduced to him before dinner. Afterwards, in a speech, he outlined his approach.
Ziel der Gesamtpolitik allein sei
The
Wiedergewinnung
sole
der
aim of general policy, regaining political power, exterminating Marxism, root and branch, tightest authoritarian state leadership, eliminating the cancer that is democracy,
Erkämpfung neuer
fighting for new export opportunities, and better still perhaps, the conquest of new living space in the East and its merciless Germanization.
Es wurden keine politischen Ziele verkündet. No political goals were declared that might give cause for concern.
The emergency ordinance was issued today. It contains drastic regulations for political gatherings and demonstrations and restrictions for the press.
Überall Zeitungsverbote. Sehr vorsichtig. Press bans everywhere. Very careful use of language. We must once again learn to read between the lines. National Socialists are occupying all the government posts.
Hitler besetzt alle Machtpositionen.
Hitler is filling all positions of power with his own people. The interior ministries, the police, schools, universities, the radio.
Adolf Hitler machte seine ersten Schritte auf dem diplomatischen Parkett.
Adolf Hitler took his first steps on the diplomatic stage. Everybody was watching him.
Der ehemalige Gefreite.
The former corporal appeared rather uncomfortable in his new role.
Immer wieder fuhr er mit der Hand.
He kept reaching for the place where his uniform belt would have been. He crumpled his handkerchief and seemed struck with stage fright.
Es ist eine schwere Aufgabe, hier an dieser Stelle Bericht zu geben vom Staatsbegräbnis der beiden Toten, die wir lassen mussten. Unseren SA-Kameraden Hans Majkowski und den treuen Oberwachtmeister der Schutzpolizei Berlin, Leuris.
The state funeral for the Nazi gangster Majkowski. Majkowski murdered a communist in December. In the night of the 31st of January, he and a policeman were shot. The police officer was an alleged supporter of the left.
Möwen schweben über der Spree. Es ist, als ob das Meer, das deutsche Meer, das im grün-grauen Bogen unsere weißen Küsten umbrandet, seine Grüße senden wollte, den beiden stillen Schläfern im Dom.
Um 11:15 gelang es mir mit Mühe und Not.
At 11:45, I was finally able to push my way through the crowd and into the cathedral, which was filled to capacity.
Vorn am Altar standen
At the front, by the altar, the two coffins lay on biers. Yes, may the Lord in all his mercy bring these two faithful souls home to him, through the night into the light, through struggle to freedom.
Vor einem Sturm marschiert ein junger deutscher Arbeiter, aufrecht, stolz, der Kamerad seiner Kameraden und der Führer seiner Gefolgschaft. Wie all die anderen, die Hunderttausende, geht er vorbei an dem greisen Reichspräsidenten und dem jungen Reichskanzler. Das, was er geträumt hatte, das ist nun Wirklichkeit. Das junge und das alte Deutschland reichen sich die Hände.
Der SPD-Vorsitzende Wels erklärte,
Social Democratic Party Chairman Wels explained that he'd convened the meeting with trade union representatives in order to discuss what final defensive measures might be taken. He said that factory workers were constantly asking when they should lay down their tools.
Die Diskussion in den Betrieben.
The idea of a united front with the Communist Party was a popular topic, he said. Arrests and press bans were increasing.
Gewerkschaftsführer Leipert teilte mit, er müsse doch die Frage
Trade union leader Leipert posed the question of what our goals in case of a general strike would be. Those workers who are still employed would certainly have to fear losing what might well be their last job.
Ernas Zustand hat sich wieder verschlimmert.
Yesterday morning, I told the doctor that Erna's condition had worsened. He prescribed a new medicine. I was given something to help with my cough, because my home remedies have achieved nothing.
Erna hat wieder Fieber heute.
Erna has a fever again today.
Heute war nicht so viel auf der Station zu tun. Ich habe nur 4 Patienten.
There wasn't much to do on the ward today. I only examined 4 patients in total.
Um 6 ging ich fort und traf mich
I left at 6 and met Trude.
Dann gingen wir in den Metropalast in der
We went to the Metro Palace in Chausseestraße and watched the film FP1 Doesn't Answer, starring Hans Albers.
Der Film war sehr mäßig.
The film was mediocre.
Wer schießt denn hier?
I can't understand why such a big fuss has been made of it.
Idioten!
I try to go to Hitler's mass meetings.
Meine Volksgenossen und Volksgenossinnen.
It started at 8, but when I arrived at 6, the roads to the hall were already blocked.
Ich glaube, man sagt wohl nicht zu viel, wenn man behauptet, dass am heutigen Abend mindestens 20 Millionen Menschen in Deutschland und jenseits der deutschen Grenzen die Rede des Reichskanzlers Adolf Hitlers zu Gehör bekommen werden. Und wenn die jüdischen Zeitungen heute glauben, auf versteckte Drohungen die nationalsozialistische Bewegung einschüchtern zu können, wenn sie heute glauben, unsere Notverordnungen umgehen zu dürfen, sie sollen sich hüten. Einmal wird unsere Geduld zu Ende sein und dann wird den Juden das freche Lügenmaul gestopft werden.
Je parviens à obtenir un billet d'entrée.
I was able to get a ticket.
Ma place n'est pas loin de la tribune.
My seat wasn't far from the speaker's platform.
Soudain, tout le monde est debout.
Suddenly, everyone stood up.
Et voilà Hitler qui fait son entrée.
Hitler appeared through a door at the back of the hall.
Unser Führer, der Reichskanzler Adolf Hitler, hat das Wort.
Un silence absolu s'installe.
As he began to speak, there was silence.
Am 30. Januar dieses Jahres wurde die neue Regierung der nationalen Konzentration gebildet.
Je ne sais pas à quel moment.
I don't know at what point it happened, but the audience became electrified. Thousands of people leap out of their seats, raising their arms towards the Führer. They're laughing, crying, or simply gawping. I look at the woman next to me. Fat beads of sweat are trickling down her face. The atmosphere in the hall is one of malicious glee.
Und dann kam der Verfall unserer Kultur, diese Welle von Verpestung unseres ganzen kulturellen Lebens, der Zersetzung unserer Literatur, der Vergiftung unseres Theaters, der Kino, die ganze Kunst. Sie wird nun langsam vernarrt. Millionen unserer deutschen Volksgenossen nehmen gar keinen Anteil mehr. Sie sagt ihnen nichts mehr. Diese Kunst, die nicht aus unserem Volk geboren worden ist, sondern die uns fremd ist und fremd bleiben wird, die nichts mit deutschem Wesen zu tun hat und nicht aus unserer Seele kam, sie ist nur durch eine geschäftige Presse unserem Volk aufoktroyiert worden, mundgerecht gemacht worden. Wie lange noch?
Suivi par son état-major.
Followed by his staff, Hitler makes his way towards the exit. The men look drained. The women have dark rings around their eyes.
Je me dépêche de partir.
I hurry away.
Die Versammlung, der wie Goebbels behauptet 20
The rally, which Goebbels claims 20 to 30 million Germans listened to on the radio, was doubtless a great success for Hitler.
Welch ein Instrument der Massenpropaganda.
What a successful instrument of propaganda the radio has become, and how little use have Hitler's opponents made of it to date.
Mein liebes Kind, Grippewelle und Heil
My dear
Hitler
child,
herrschen den
the market is dominated by influenza and Heil Hitler. The flu is bad, but strangely I haven't caught it.
Das Geschäft plätschert so.
Business is slow. All of our customers are laid low. Hitler's appointment came as a shock. Yesterday, Theo told me that we'd received no new printing orders all week.
Sonst herrscht aber eigentlich Ruhe.
But otherwise, things are calm.
In der Sprechstunde sehe ich immer wieder.
When I examine my patients, I notice more and more of them are wearing swastikas under their clothing.
Zum ersten Mal ist in meiner
For the
Sprechstunde
first time, one of my patients spoke about Jews in a derogatory manner.
Erna Kind geht's besser.
Erna is much better. On Friday, I informed the doctor. On Saturday, we got the sick note. Today, I took Erna outside for the first time.
Morgens gegen 9:30 machte ich auf der Abteilung.
I made my rounds in the morning at around 9:30.
Um 10 ging ich in die
At 10 I went to church where the pastor gave a good sermon. In the evening, Friedel called. She says she wants to see me again.
So halb und halb habe ich jetzt
So in a way, I now have 3 girls, Trude, Friedel and Lily. But I definitely like Trude best.
Göring räumt auf. Ein
Göring is cracking down. One governor after the other is being toppled. Admiral Levetsov has been named chief of police for Berlin. Lutze is police chief in Hanover and Scheppmann in Dortmund.
The SA was equipped with the newest model of an automatic pistol, and the police is now instructed by Göring to shoot first and ask questions later.
Polizeibeamte, die von der Schusswaffe
Any police officer who uses a firearm will be protected by me regardless of the consequences.
Jeder Beamte hat sich stets
Officers should always remember that failure to take action weighs heavier than mistakes made when taking action.
Ossietzky sollte bei einer Versammlung des Verbandes
Ossietzky was supposed to give a speech at a League of German Writers meeting.
Erich Mühsam stürzte
Erich Mühsam rushed to our table, where the speakers sat, and spread out the evening paper, which had just appeared with Göring's shoot first decree. Any noise from outside startled us, as we were expecting the nationalists' shooting spree to begin.
Ossietzky war kein Redner.
Ossietzky was not a good orator. He held tight to the table, head bowed, barely lifting his voice. There was nothing of the people's champion about him. He didn't seem capable of rousing anybody to action.
Meine Eltern hatten die erste richtige Wohnung.
My parents rented their first real apartment in Bayerische Straße and furnished it according to their taste.
Top modern.
Very modern, with black Bauhaus furniture, those elegant chairs made of steel tubes.
Mein liebes Kind.
My dear child, the flu has found its way to us after all. Edith and Marta have been in bed 4 days, just imagine. On Sunday, I ate at your brother Werner's house. He takes a serious view of the political situation and thinks it will lead to his ruin. But if he was still in the Communist Party, it would be even worse for him. Despite those dark topics, I very much enjoyed being there. And the stuffed pigeons were exquisite.
Zunächst ist ja für die Juden nichts zu
For the time being, Jews have nothing to fear. There are hardly any in the civil service, and new laws can't be introduced that quickly.
Büro, Berlin, Arbeit.
Office, Berlin, work. Still not enough money. Our propaganda work is faltering. I watched the Führer's Sports Palace speech. It was a triumph.
Sie wird uns als
It will be crucial for our propaganda campaign.
Ich erhielt ein Telegramm von Göring.
I received a telegram from Göring that read roughly as follows: Invitation to an important meeting in the Palais of the Reichstag President.
Ich fühlte mich verpflichtet,
I felt obliged to attend, and upon arrival I found 40 to 50 representatives of business and industry.
Hitler erschien dann in Begleitung des
Hitler arrived with Dr. Wagner and greeted every attendee with a handshake.
Nach Hitlers Ansicht bewiesen 6 bis 8
In Hitler's opinion, the 6 to 8 million communist voters in Germany are proof of how dangerous the situation is. He says only the NSDAP can save the country from the communist threat. He expressed his commitment to private property and the right of inheritance.
Nachdem Hitler das Zimmer verlassen hatte,
After Hitler left the room, Dr. Schacht proposed setting up an election fund of, as far as I remember, 3 million Reichsmarks.
Hitler poursuit sa tournée
Hitler is continuing his election campaign. Newsreels show Hitler in Cologne, Hamburg, Stuttgart, Nuremberg, Munich, Breslau, and Königsberg.
Il voyage avec son avion.
He travels in his own private aeroplane, his head protected from the wind and cold by a leather cap.
Mir sind mehrere Versammlungen gesprengt.
Several meetings I attended have been attacked, and many of those present had to be taken away with serious injuries.
In Hindenburg,
Comrade Nolting narrowly escaped being beaten to death. I had a similar experience in Langenbilow. One of my companions was struck down.
In Breslau hat es eine große
A lot of people were injured in Breslau. I would request that meetings no longer take place with myself in attendance.
Mein Diener Friedrich sagte, er müsse von mir fort.
My manservant Friedrich says he must leave me. His father, a Nazi and old civil servant in Pankow, has commanded him to do so because unpleasant things are expected to happen in my house soon.
Der Junge war kreidebleich.
The boy was white as chalk.
Wieland
Herzfelder told me that, according to reliable sources, the Nazis are planning a fake assassination attempt on Hitler as the signal to start a bloodbath. His information came from the SA in Dortmund and from a wiretapped conversation between Hitler himself and Röhm.
Mit Peter im Zoo. I took Peter to the zoo. It was a relief to watch the elegant wading birds, like flamingos and cranes, whose gorgeous colors waft over one and are more beautiful than anything I know.
Oh, welche Köstlichkeit unter einer Sonne.
What a delight it would be to lie in the sun in the place these birds call home.
Man erwartet Besetzung Berlins durch SA.
It seems likely that the SA will occupy Berlin.
Heinrich Mann
has departed for the Riviera. Thomas Mann is in Paris. Alfred Kehr is in Prague.
Sie haben keine Lust, sich von
They have no desire to be accosted by barbarous Nazis or possibly even killed.
Fast jeden Tag kamen anonyme Briefe, die
Almost every day, letters arrived for Muzam containing death threats, or he'd get telephone calls predicting his imminent demise.
wollte am 28.
He wanted to leave early on the 28th. His suitcase was packed and everything was ready.
Das geplante Attentat hat heute
The
stattgefunden.
planned assassination attempt took place today, not on Hitler, but on the Reichstag building.
An 4 Stellen Feuer. Feuerwehr hat Alarm.
Fire in 4 places. Fire brigade sounded the alarm. Assembly chamber in flames. Telephone connections lost.
Das ganze Gebäude steht in Flammen. Über dicke Feuerwehr.
The whole building was on fire. Following the thick firemen's hoses, we made our way to the lobby.
An vielen Stellen wurde Brandstiftung.
Evidence of arson was found in 4 separate places. There is no doubt that the communists are trying to seize power using arson and terror tactics. Communist deputies have been arrested and the SA has been alerted.
Als Brandstifter ist ein armer.
They have arrested some poor soul, allegedly a Dutch communist called Marinus van der Lubbe, and charged him with arson. They say he ignited flammable material at more than 30 sites around the building.
Ich wollte, dass die Arbeiter sich auflehnen gegen die
I
Staatsordnung.
wanted the workers to revolt against the political order.
Sie sollten denken, dass ein
I wanted them to see this as the signal for a united rebellion.
Karl kam nach Hause. Meine erste Frage
Carl came home. My first question was, what are we going to do now? First, let's go to bed, he said. I repeated, Carl, you have to flee.
Karl schüttelte den Kopf.
Carl shook his head. No, I'll wait another 3 days.
Morgens um 5 Uhr, wir schliefen noch.
At 5 o'clock, when we were still sleeping, 2 detective superintendents from the Berlin police came and arrested Erich Muzam. In parting, he said to me, "My dear Zenzel, things are coming to a head. I think it will be even worse this time." Then he left, as calm as ever.
Karl ging ins Badezimmer. wusch sich, während
Carl
ich
went to the bathroom and washed while I quickly brewed coffee and made him a sandwich.
Seine letzten Worte
His last
waren,
words to me were, "Chin up, I'll be back soon." I went to the window, my feet like lead.
an der Ecke stand ein
A private car was waiting at the corner. 3 men climbed inside with Carl in the middle. Then the car shot off like an arrow.
Die Regierung verhaftet seit dem Morgen.
Since morning, the government has been arresting communist MPs, lawyers, writers. They include Egon Erwin Kisch, Erich Mühsam, Ludwig Renn, Karl von Ossietzky.
Der kommunistische Fraktionsvorsitzende Torgler.
Torgler, the communist chairman, handed himself over to the police. It is said that he was seen with the arsonist.
Mir wird eine Person gegenübergestellt, von der
A person was presented to me who I was told was the arsonist von der Lübbe. I declare that I have never before seen this person and that I do not know him.
Die Straßenbahn ist dicht besetzt.
The tram is densely packed.
Die meisten Gesichter
Most
sind
of the people hide their faces behind the newspaper. I look over someone's shoulder. The president has issued a decree.
Todesstrafe für Hochverrat.
Death penalty for treason, arson, or attacks on the government. Restrictions on personal freedom. No privacy of postal, telegraphic, and telephonic communications. House searches at any time of the day or night.
Göring hat Hunderte oder gar Tausende in ganz
Göring has had hundreds, if not thousands, of people in Germany arrested. Nobody that I have spoken to believes it was a communist arson attack.
Die Panik im vollem Gange.
Full-scale panic.
Der Vorsitzende der KPD.
The Communist Party leader Thälmann was arrested in Charlottenburg today.
Meine liebste Mordi, ich befinde mich seit gestern Abend
My
in der
beloved Mordi,
Strafanstalt Spandau.
since yesterday evening I have been in Spandau prison.
Du wirst erfahren haben, dass man meine...
You will already have heard that I am being held in protective custody. It's possible that this is just a temporary measure. I'm currently not allowed to receive visitors.
The Nazis waged the election campaign in a very impressive way. The huge Nazi posters that littered the cities and the countryside, the many brown uniforms, the frequent parades of the Brown Army, the mass meetings, and the daily broadcasts of election speeches on the radio have already given the impression that there is only one big party in Germany.
Am 5. März, da bläst das deutsche Schicksal zum letzten Male zum Appell. Und wir wollen die Nacht, wir wollen das Gewölk beiseite schieben, das heute Deutschland umlagert. Und dann, Volksgenossen, versprechen wir wollen euch die Sonne zurückholen.
Man befürchtet Pogrome, aber ich glaube
There
nicht
is a fear
recht,
of
dass es dazu
pogroms,
kommt.
but I don't think things will go that far.
Nichtsdestoweniger ist die Spannung schwer.
Nonetheless, the tension is hard to bear. I would like 5th of March to be over.
Gott wird wissen, was uns an den nächsten
God
Tagen
knows what terrible things lie ahead for us in the coming days and weeks. We beg for God's mercy.
Berlin, 1st of March 1933. Adolf Hitler has been Reich Chancellor for 1 month. He leads a cabinet of National Socialists, monarchists, nationalist dreamers, and militarists. Their shared goal is the end of the Weimar Republic, the elimination of democracy. They purge the ministries and civil service, occupy the police and government offices, ban newspapers, and bring the press and radio under their control. Thousands of Social Democrats and Communists vanish into jails and ad hoc torture chambers. The Catholic Centre Party and liberals are harassed. Demonstrations are banned. Meetings broken up. Violence and propaganda rule the streets. But there is still an opposition, and an election is coming up. On the 5th of March, Hitler hopes that the people will confirm his position. This is the Republic's last chance.
Erster warmer Frühlingstag. Herrliches Wetter.
The first warm spring-like day. The weather is wonderful.
Im Wahllokal musste ich etwa
I had to queue for about a quarter of an hour at the polling station. No Social Democrats or Communists at the door. The porter Schlötker had hung out swastika flags.
Nach der Wahl besichtigten wir das Reichstagsgebäude.
After we voted, we went to see the Reichstag building. Its dome has lost almost all its windows. On weekdays, there are tours of the fire-damaged building.
Die Wahlbeteiligung war enorm.
Voter turnout was remarkable. The radio reports 90%. Erich, his wife, and their visitors are sitting in front of it, listening to the results.
Die jetzige Gesamtzählung der bisher vorliegenden Reichstagswahlergebnisse umfasst etwas über 28 Millionen Stimmen. Davon empfiehlen auf die Nationalsozialisten 12,3 Millionen. Das heißt 44%.
Wir saßen in einem Lokal für die Bekanntgabe der Wahlergebnisse.
We were sitting in a pub to listen to the election results.
SA-Leute hielten
Some SA men held their revolvers to our chests. They forced us to go into their Sturm pub. Once inside, they called us communist pigs, and we were brutally beaten.
Dann kamen wir in die SA-Zentrale Hedemannstraße.
Then we were taken to the SA headquarters on Hedemannstraße. Shouting Heil Hitler, they forced us to kneel down and recite the Lord's Prayer, and then to sing the Nazi Party anthem. Anyone who didn't immediately obey was beaten unconscious.
Wir mussten uns vollständig aus.
We had to take off all our clothes.
Während dieser Vernehmung
During the interrogation, they kept whipping us.
Kommunisten 3,4 Millionen. Das heißt 12,1%.
Ich habe heute Dienst.
I'm on duty today.
Wir hatten 2 Aufnahmen.
We had 2 admissions, both of them communists, who were delivered to the hospital by National Socialists after being given a good beating.
Mitleid ist gar nicht am Platze.
There's no sympathy for them here.
Es verbreitet sich lähmende Furcht und
A
Willenlosigkeit.
crippling fear and faint-heartedness is infiltrating the labor movement.
Es gab Freunde, die offen
Friends of mine have openly admitted that they fear for their lives and that of their wives and children.
Der Wahlsieg der Nationalsozialisten ist kolossal.
The National Socialists' election victory is massive. I've included the final result here.
Die Nazis bekommen offenbar mit den
In coalition with the People's Party, the Nazis apparently have a majority of around 51%.
Interessant ist eine Karte im Berliner Tageblatt.
There was an interesting map with the results in the Berliner Tageblatt.
Am wenigsten Anhänger haben die Nazis im ganzen
The Nazis have the fewest supporters in the far south of the country. They also didn't do well in Westphalia, Cologne, Koblenz, and Düsseldorf.
Den größten Sieg haben sie im Osten des Reiches.
Their greatest victory, the east of the country, East Prussia, Pomerania, and Silesia, but also in Schleswig and Hanover.
Der Reichstagswahlkampf ist bereits liquidiert.
The Reichstag election campaign has already been paid off. Not only did we not lose any money, we ended up with a tremendous surplus.
Mein zukünftiges Ministerium wird
The shell of my future ministry is just being finished. It will have 5 large departments covering film, theatre, press and radio.
Wir machen gar keinen Hehl daraus. Der Rundfunk gehört uns. Niemand umsonst. Und den Rundfunk werden wir in den Dienst unserer Idee stellen. Und keine andere Idee soll hier zu Wort kommen.
In der Townsien ist dasselbe Getümmel wie stets.
On Townsienstraße, the same hustle and bustle as ever, except for the people collecting money in tins with swastikas on them. I go there often to meet up with my gang of gossips around Wittenbergplatz, and we sit on the silver terrace in KaDeWe and bemoan the state of the world.
Natürlich weiß ich genau, dass es uns noch sehr gut geht.
I'm aware that we're still doing just fine, so long as we're able to sit there undisturbed, drinking coffee.
Ein Straßenhändler
A street vendor is doing a roaring trade in swastika insignia. Little boys in particular are buying them and attaching them to their clothes. In the afternoon, I left for Paris via Saarbrücken.
Dr. Joseph Goebbels ist zum Minister für Volksaufklärung.
Dr. Joseph Goebbels has been named Minister of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda.
Von Hitler ist ihm
Hitler has thus bestowed tremendous power upon him.
Die neue Ausstellung in Berlin, die Frau. Meine Damen und Herren, ich persönlich möchte einen glücklichen Zufall darin sehen, dass meine erste öffentliche Rede nach Übernahme des Ministeriums für Volksaufklärung und Propaganda gerade vor deutschen Frauen gehalten wird. Wenn ich mich auch zu Treitschkes Wort bekenne, dass Männer die Geschichte machen, so vergesse ich dabei doch nicht, dass es die Frauen sind, die unsere Jungen zu Männern erziehen.
Nach dem Beschluss der Nationalsozialisten sollen wir Juden aus
The National Socialists have decided that us Jews are to be excluded from the judiciary. I have no doubt they will carry through with their plans. But in these times, it's hard to do anything new. I shall put off going abroad until the last moment.
Es ist keine Kleinigkeit aus diesem Land, dass man trotzdem...
It's no small thing to leave this country behind, which one loves in spite of it all. The culture, the language, the mentality, these are all things you won't find anywhere else.
Bis heute hatte ich gehofft, bald nach Berlin zurückkehren zu können.
I had still been hoping that I would be able to return to Berlin soon. But today I received a letter from Roland de Margerie which put an end to those hopes.
Goertz ist bei ihm gewesen und
He said Goertz visited him and asked him to tell me that an SA Sturmführer informed him that something was being planned for me.
Es wurde in Erwägung gezogen, wenn
They were considering requesting protective custody for me if I went back to Germany.
Liebste Maud.
Dearest Maud,
Ich habe wenig
I have not written much, as I don't have anything in particular to report. One day is very much like the other.
In der Nacht gegen 1 Uhr wurde an meiner
At around
Wohnungstür
1 o'clock in the morning, there was a loud ringing and knocking at the door. My husband opened up.
Es traten 6 bis 8 Mann herein.
6 to 8 men in SA uniform entered. They were all young people who had been to school with my children.
Einer forderte mich mit den Worten auf.
One of them ordered me to get dressed.
Die Fahrt ging in die
They
SA-Kaserne.
drove me to the SA barracks. The Demut pub is in the front part of the building. We drove into the courtyard and I was told to get out. When my name was called, the Sturmführer who was present said, "Ah, Jankowski, that fat old cow."
Ich musste meinen Mantel ausziehen und mich auf den Tisch legen.
I had to take off my coat and lie on the table. They pushed up my skirt and tugged down my drawers. I was struck across the bottom 20 times. We each received 4 rounds of 20 strokes.
Patient gibt an, am 17. März vom
The patient claims to have been apprehended by SA Sturmgruppe 27 on the 17th of March. He was beaten with rubber truncheons and shoulder straps. He has not defecated or urinated since his imprisonment. Since he was complaining of a severe headache, chest pains, as well as a strong but painful urge to relieve his bladder, he was brought here tonight.
Tag von Potsdam. Große militärische Inszenierung.
Potsdam Day, a big military display.
Eröffnung des Reichstages.
Ceremony for the reopening of the Reichstag.
Wir hielten vor der St. Peterskirche in Potsdam.
We stopped outside the Peter and Paul Church in Potsdam. There was panic on the streets. The police cordon broke.
Wir hörten Schmährufe.
People shouted abusive remarks. Down with the Center Party.
Die Regierung der nationalen Erhebung ist entschlossen, ihre von dem deutschen Volk übernommene Aufgabe zu erfüllen. Sie tritt daher heute hin vor dem Deutschen Reichstag mit dem heißen Wunsch, in ihm eine Stütze zu finden für die Durchführung ihrer Mission.
Ich sitze nahe bei Hindenburg und sehe, wie ihm die Tränen in die Augen
I'm sitting close to Hindenburg and notice tears welling up in his eyes.
Alle erheben sich von ihren Plätzen.
Everyone gets up from their seats to give the venerable old Field Marshal a standing ovation as he shakes hands with the young Chancellor.
Es war sehr klug von Hitler.
It was very smart of Hitler to bow to tradition.
Sehr schlau auch, den
And it was very clever to haul the old president out to Potsdam and to mobilize the jubilant masses.
The government plans an enabling act and wants us to present it to the Reichstag as soon as possible. It will practically override the constitution, the fundamental rights, and requires a 2/3 majority in the parliament. This is only possible with the help of the Center Party.
Von heute gibt es nur wenig zu berichten.
Not much to report today.
Es ist augenblicklich wundervolles Wetter.
Wonderful weather at the moment with sunshine every day.
Ich hätte große Lust, das Auto wieder anzumachen.
I'd really like to get the car back on the road.
Vor der Reichstagssitzung war der Platz.
Before the Reichstag Assembly, the square in front of the Kroll Opera House was one dark mass of people. We were greeted with jubilant chants of, "We want the Enabling Act."
Junge Burschen, das Hakenkreuz.
We ran the gauntlet past young fellows with swastikas on their breast, who shouted insults like centrist pigs, Marxist swine.
Meine Damen und Herren, die Sitzung ist eröffnet.
Im Saale sahen wir uns alsbald von
In the debating chamber, we were immediately surrounded by armed SS men. We didn't know how or whether we would be able to leave the room. Many of us had already been arrested. Zollmann was lying half dead in hospital.
Sturm, Sturm, Sturm. Läute die Glocken von Turm zu Turm. Läute die Männer, reise die Buben. Läute die Schläfer aus ihren Stuben. Läute die Mädchen herunter die Stiegen. Läute die Mütter hinweg von den Wiegen. Dröhnen soll sie und gellen die Luft. Rasen im Donner der Rache. Läute die Toten aus ihrer Gruft. Deutschland erwache. Ich danke Ihnen, dass Sie sich erhoben haben.
Hitler lit un long discours-programme.
Hitler holds a long inaugural address. His speech is carefully calculated to win over the Catholics.
Angefangen vom Straßenraub, der Plünderung von Geschäften, Brandstiftung und Eisenbahnfrevel bis zum Attentat. Er hält alles als politische Betätigung im Dienste der kommunistischen Idee seine moralische Sanktion. Es wird die oberste Aufgabe der nationalen Regierung sein, diese Erscheinung nicht nur im Interesse Deutschlands, sondern auch des übrigen Europas in unserem Lande restlos auszurotten und zu beseitigen.
During the speech, Goering joins in the applause. Every now and then he uses opera glasses and scrutinizes the ranks. The Centre Party and the Social Democrats gave a defeated impression. The latter were visibly terrorized.
Herr Dr. Wirth vom Zentrum.
Dr. Wirth of the Centre Party comes to speak to us, declaring bitterly that for his faction, it's just a matter of whether or not they will personally hand Hitler the rope that will be used to hang them.
Suite à la reprise de la séance.
When the meeting resumes, parliamentarian Wels demands to be heard in the name of the Social Democrats. His tone almost suggests he wants to be excused for speaking against the act, rather like a child who's been beaten and fears there's more to come. But under the circumstances, his speech is truly honorable, full of dignity and courage.
Nach den Verfolgungen, die die Sozialdemokratische Partei in der letzten Zeit erfahren hat, wird niemand von ihr billigerweise verlangen und erwarten können, dass sie für das hier eingebrachte Ermächtigungsgesetz stimmt. Freiheit und Leben kann man uns nehmen, die Ehre nicht.
Als Wels geendet hat, steigt der Führer aufs Podium.
When Wels is finished, the Führer steps up to the podium and gives him his answer.
Sie sind wehleidig, meine Herren, und nicht für diese heutige Zeit bestimmt. Sie meinen, dass Ihr Stern wieder aufgehen könnte. Meine Herren, der Stern Deutschlands wird aufgehen und Ihre wird sinken.
Après lui parle le prélat Kaz.
After that, Prelate Kaz speaks, meekly and deferentially, in the name of the Centre Party.
Die Deutsche Zentrumspartei setzt sich in dieser Stunde, wo alle kleinen und engen Erwägungen schweigen müssen, bewusst und aus nationalem Verantwortungsgefühl über alle parteipolitischen und sonstigen Bedenken hinweg.
Das Zentrum und gar die Staatspartei stimmen dem
The
Ermächtigungsgesetz.
Centre and even the State Party vote for the Enabling Act. Only the Social Democrats vote against it.
Jetzt sind wir auch verfassungsmäßig.
Now we really are the rulers of the nation.
Der Begriff Dummheit ist
The
zu schwach
term
für die
idiotic is not enough to describe the decision to vote in favor of the act. I already knew that I would never be able to erase that yes from my biography.
Ich gehe langsam durch die Straßen.
I take a stroll through the streets. It's quite warm.
Die Sonne liegt noch auf den Fensterreihen der
The
Häuser.
sun is still shining on the rows of windows.
Auf der Townsendstraße gehen
On Townsend Street, the pedestrians walk tightly packed together. The women wear springtime dresses. Among the cafe-goers are many SS officers.
Hinter den Schaufenstern stehen
Behind the
Schilder.
shop windows are signs. German business, German wares, true German craftsmanship.
Im Kabinett dankt Hugenberg dem Führer für
In
die
the cabinet meeting, Hugenberg thanks the Führer for the acumen and stringency of his policies. The hostile propaganda abroad rankles. The many Jews that have emigrated from Germany are inciting hatred against us around the world.
Goering harshly insulted the foreign press representatives in a vehement tone which they will have to get used to. Selected journalists were later led to the communist leaders Thälmann and Torgler, as well as to the publishers of the communist Red Flag and World Stage.
Thälmann didn't allow his photograph to be taken and remained silent. When he was asked if he had complaints about the food or his treatment, he shook his head. Karl von Ossietzky politely bowed and introduced himself to every visitor. He said there were no charges pressed against him, and he also had no significant complaints. He seemed to view his situation in a relaxed way.
Fatih hatte seinen 13. Sterbetag.
The 13th anniversary of Daddy's death. We visited his grave and decorated it with daffodils.
Nett sah es dort aus.
It looked pretty. The snow had nicely preserved Daddy's wreath and twigs from Memorial Sunday. Opposite him, where there were still graves back in the autumn, is now a tree nursery.
Abends ging ich mit Trude fort.
In the evening, I went out with Trude. First, I had some dinner at Aschinger. Then we went to a little pub on Schönhauser Allee. From there to Alexanderplatz, where I had a few pints. Afterwards, we came back to my place.
Eine Nacht heißer Liebe und ein Frühlingstag.
It was a night of passion, followed by a beautiful spring day.
Bis nachmittags um 5 blieb Trude bei
Trude
mir.
stayed with me till 5 p.m.
Dann gingen wir essen.
Then we went out to dinner. It was such gorgeous weather that we decided to take a walk.
Anschließend hörten wir im Rundfunk
After that, we listened to La Traviata on the radio. It's my favorite Verdi opera. The music is so soft and soothing.
Mit Rücksicht auf die nationale Umwälzung
Taking into account the national upheavals in Germany, the board has decided in principle that the contracts of Jewish colleagues and staff should be revoked where possible.
Es herrscht Einigkeit darüber, dass der
There's
Vertrag
general agreement that the contract with Chorel as director and screenwriter must immediately be revoked. Further, it was decided to end the contract with Erich Pommer. The board has decided to end its relationship with Robert Liebmann.
Die Frage der Entlassung der jüdischen Büro.
The question of the dismissal of Jewish office workers will be deferred for the time being.
Wir werden gegen die Auslandshetze nur ankommen.
We will only be able to fight against this incitement from abroad if we can assert pressure on its initiators, that is, the Jews who live in Germany.
Wir müssen zu einem groß
We must ensure the large-scale boycott of all Jewish businesses.
Bei den Juden entsetzen.
The Jews are horrified, but they're not the only ones. The boycott is set to start on Saturday, the 1st of April.
Hier in Berlin herrscht Ruhe. Man kann es nicht bestreiten.
Things are calm here in Berlin. There's no denying it.
Es ist noch kein Geschäft.
No shops have been plundered as yet. None of us has seen anyone harassing or verbally abusing Jews on the streets or on public transport. So we'll just wait and see for now.
Heute Morgen um 10 Uhr hat der Boykott begonnen. Er wird bis um die Mitternachtsstunde fortgesetzt. Er vollzieht sich mit einer schlagartigen Wucht, aber auch mit einer imponierenden Manneszucht und Disziplin. Unsere Partei und unser Führer! Heil! Heil!
Die Plakate kleben an den Schaufenstern.
The placards are stuck to shop windows. Big letters. Jew.
Die Menschen ziehen durch die Straßen.
People walk the streets keen to see which shops are German and which are Jewish. The Nazis are out agitating.
Eine Patientin hat angerufen, sie könne heute nicht kommen.
A patient called and said she couldn't come today.
Ich sagte, dass es am
I said that it would be best if she never came again. People are a cowardly lot, but I've always known that.
Liebe Kinder, der gestrige Boykotttag ist...
Dear children, the boycott day yesterday was entirely calm and without incident. Lots of shops didn't even open up. The rest of them quickly closed. Otherwise, we're all well.
Gestern Abend ermunterten wir uns...
Yesterday evening, we did something to cheer ourselves up. It was Auntie Rosa's birthday, and we celebrated with family gossip, bread rolls, meringue pie, and lots of amusing anecdotes.
Jetzt spricht zu Ihnen der bekannte New Yorker Rundfunkberichterstatter Mr. Doug Brinkley über die Gräuelhetze in Amerika.
I can now say to you that the American people today realize that these stories are untrue and without foundation.
Und Sie, Mr. Brinkley, sind jetzt zu uns gekommen, um sich selbst von den Zuständen im neuen Deutschland zu überzeugen.
Ich finde, heute herrscht in Deutschland Ruhe und Ordnung.
Den Abschluss der diesjährigen Hallensportsaison in Berlin bildete das große Fest der Berliner Polizei im Sportpalast.
Das Mikrofon der Funkstunde Berlin steht jetzt in den frühen Morgenstunden des 5. April in der übel beleumdetsten Gegend Berlins, die einst die Hochburg des deutschen Bolschewismus war, in der Münz- und Grenadierstraße. Gerade ist eine größere polizeiliche Aktion eingeleitet. Eine endlos lange Reihe von Polizeiwagen, besetzt mit Beamten, Karabinern, Maschinenpistolen, rückt daran. Die Beamten springen herab von den Wagen, sausen die Straße entlang. Wir setzen alles. Auf den Dächern werden Polizeibeamte, Schutzpolizeibeamte postiert, um die Umgebung zu sichern, um Überfälle von Kommunisten und so weiter und politischen Gegnern zu vermeiden. Die Beamten stürmen die Treppen hinauf. Achtung, Polizei, aufmachen! Da vor mir stehen 2 große Polizeiwagen. Auf dem einen sind 10, auf dem anderen nochmal 10, 15 politische Gefangene. Herr Kommissar, warum ist dieser Mann hier festgenommen?
Einen Moment, ich kann das nicht so übersehen. Ich werde mir mal seinen Pass geben lassen.
Ja. Wie lange sind Sie in Deutschland jetzt?
Seit 27. März 97.
Was machen Sie denn eigentlich in Deutschland?
Ich habe ein Möbelgeschäft. Platz 4.
Aber keine Aufenthaltsgenehmigung?
Ich wohne noch 36 Jahre. Ich habe mir von Zeirebier gesagt, ich habe es nicht nötig.
Was wollen Sie eigentlich in Deutschland hier? Also, Sie meinen, Sie können hier besser Geld verdienen, was?
Nein.
Sie nehmen deutschen Leuten, deutschen Arbeitern das Brot weg?
Nein, was Sie das lassen?
Die Aktion ist an sich wohl beendet. Die politischen Gefangenen sitzen wieder alle in den beiden Polizeiwagen. Die Suchkommandos werden zurückgezogen. Jetzt geht es wieder zurück nach der Friesenstraße.
Liebste Maud, ich bitte dich beim
Dearest Maudie, please make a request to the police for permission to speak to me. Things are still tolerable for me here. Of course, I am very worried. There is no point writing about it at length. I embrace you fondly. Your Karl.
Abtransport über Schlesischen Bahnhof. Transported by train from Schlesische Bahnhof to Sonnenburg. Arrival and so on.
Nacht mit Ossietzky.
Night with Ossietzky and Lytton.
Ungefähr 11 Uhr vormittags kam ich in Sonnenburg an.
I arrived in Sonnenburg at around 11 o'clock in the morning.
In dem alten, wegen Baufälligkeit.
The political prisoners were being kept in the old jail that had been abandoned due to disrepair. The warders were all SA men. I had to wait for around an hour.
Mühsam war schrecklich zugerichtet.
Mühsam was in a terrible state.
Ich hatte es schwer.
I could hardly conceal my horror from him. He was sitting on a chair without his spectacles. They had been smashed. His teeth had been knocked out. The visit lasted only 16 minutes, and we were under constant supervision from an SA Sturmführer. When we parted, Erich said to me, "Remember one thing, Zensler. I will certainly never behave like a coward."
Auf dem Obersalzberg habe ich mit dem Führer.
I met the Führer on the Obersalzberg to discuss the open questions. We will make the 1st of May a day of national labor, a sublime demonstration of the will of the German people. On the 2nd of May, we will occupy all trade union offices, bringing them into line too.
Heute wird vor allen Dingen nach der politischen Gesinnung gefragt.
These days, what people are really interested in are your political convictions. In the evening, we played cards.
Wahrscheinlich werde ich mich
in the next few days, I'll probably register as an SA physician. I would very much like to become one.
Der Reichskanzler Adolf Hitler feiert
Today is the 44th birthday of Reichschancellor Adolf Hitler. He doesn't have glorious Kaiser weather like Wilhelm I and II had. It's been raining since Easter and it's cold. 3 degrees today, so we had to heat the place.
Auf dem Arminiusplatz in Berlin wurde von der SA eine Hitlerlinde gepflanzt.
Wir wünschen dem Führer, indem wir ihm gelinde zum Geburtstagsgeschenk machen, dass das Schicksal ihn dem Vaterlande und dem deutschen Volk noch viele Jahrzehnte erhalten möge.
Hitlers Lieblingsblume ist das Edelweiß.
Hitler's favorite flower is the Edelweiss. His NSDAP comrades are selling them in his honor.
Die Zeitungen sind heute voll von Glückwünschen für den Reichskanzler Adolf Hitler.
Je nach Tonart, Charakter und Einstellung der Blätter sind die Nuancen verschieden. In einem aber stimmen alle Darlegungen überein, dass Hitler ein Mann von Format ist. Ein Staatsmann, wie er in Deutschland nur selten festzustellen war, der schon zu seinen Lebzeiten das hohe Glück besitzt, von der überwiegenden Mehrheit seines Volkes geachtet, geliebt und, was vielleicht noch wichtiger ist, verstanden zu werden.
Die Hitler-Geburtstagsfeier im Funk.
The birthday celebrations for Hitler on the radio got rather annoying. The new director is clearly getting to work.
Les exclusions des Juifs s'étendent sur...
The measures to exclude Jews from the civil service, the courts, notary offices, and the medical profession are proceeding apace.
Ils sont en outre toujours...
Persecution against them continues.
In den Krankenhäusern ist es furchtbar.
The situation in the hospitals is appalling.
Verdiente Chirurgen haben sie
They have hauled eminent surgeons out of theater in the middle of operations and have simply forbidden them from re-entering the hospital. People I know have left the country in a mad rush because they are politically suspect.
Einen kleinen Handkoffer mit Papieren und Briefen erhalten.
I received a small suitcase with documents and letters. A letter from Goetz. He says my manservant Friedrich has stolen from me and betrayed me to the Nazis.
Manchmal denke ich, dass ich in einem bösen...
Sometimes I think it's all a bad dream and I'll suddenly wake up.
Die letzten Tage waren schlimm.
The past few days have been awful. And yet somehow life goes on. I work, speak with people, read, but I am always aware of a dull pain, throbbing like a somber bass line.
Werner und zu unserem namenlosen
Werner has been arrested, as has his wife Emmy, to our unspeakable horror. Why? What for? No idea. They were taken away by police officers early in the morning at 5:30. Emmy arranged with their eldest daughter that she should go away immediately. Little Renate is with us. So that's how it is. I simply can't make sense of it. On Sunday evening, my siblings came over and we just sat here as if we were in a house of mourning.
Ein Brief an mich vom Magistrat
I
Charlottenburg.
received a letter from the Charlottenburg administration. We request you relinquish your position as senior physician of the Women's Department and Clinic.
Aus.
It's over. I've been sacked.
Aus.
It's over. My poor women. Who will be there for them now?
Fast 5 Jahre habe ich diese
For 5 years I've headed this department, helped it grow, made it well known. And now, over. Over. I have to keep repeating it. I can barely believe it. It's over.
Als Oberpräsident der Provinz Brandenburg ist es mir eine ganz besondere Freude, meinem Führer, dem deutschen Reichskanzler, heute die Vertreterinnen und Vertreter des besten Kreises der Ostmark, des Kreises Lübben, vorzustellen. Der deutsche Spreewald hat stets treu zu Preußen und zum Reich gestanden.
Die Töchter des Spreewaldes freuen sich, heute ihren Führer Adolf Hitler und den neuen Reichskanzler in Berlin begrüßen zu dürfen.
Am Nachmittag fuhr ich mit SA-Sturmführer Schmidt.
In the afternoon, I took a drive with SA Sturmführer Schmidt, SA Officer Schütz, and Trude. We set up camp in the park with a bottle. The two men practiced with their guns.
Nachdem ich schon ziemlich blau durch den Cognac
After I'd got pretty drunk on the cognac, we went to the Sturm pub.
Die SA-Leute nahmen dann einfach mein Auto und
The SA men then simply took my car to go and raid communist hideouts. We picked up a few people, including a Jew and a very nice-looking Jewess, 18 to 20 years old. The poor girl sat next to me in the back of the car. First, they gave her a good thrashing, and then Schütz and Schmidt committed indecencies against her.
Meine ersten Aufzeichnungen gelten nächst Gott,
I dedicate my first entries to God and to my dear little Erna, who begins her 3-week holiday on the 1st of May, the day of national labour.
Von der Maifeier berichten die Zeitungen.
The newspapers suggest that the May Day celebrations will be quite a show, in particular the huge fireworks display. I hope everything goes well.
Wir veranstalten im Lustgarten und
We're holding a dress rehearsal for the rally in the Lustgarten and on Tempelhof Field. As far as is humanly possible, everything will run smoothly and precisely.
Es wird ein Massenereignis.
It will be a mass event, the likes of which the world has never seen before.
Ohne Zweifel hatten alle die an diesen Veranstaltungen
Doubtless, anyone who does not participate in these events will face severe repercussions.
Deshalb wurde den Gewerkschaftsmitgliedern geraten,
Trade union members are therefore being advised to attend the public events.
Es ist angenehm warm.
It is pleasantly warm.
Einige Bewegungen
A light breeze has banished the mugginess of yesterday.
aus dem Haus des Lehrers.
Since early morning, marching music has been blaring from a loudspeaker in the teacher's house.
Morgens sind im Lustgarten die
In
Berliner
the morning,
Kinder
the children of Berlin gather in the Lustgarten. Wherever one looks, on Unter den Linden, across the whole Lustgarten, children, children, children.
Ich rede zu ihnen aus innerstem Herzen.
I speak to them from deep within my heart. It is good to talk to children if one understands their souls.
Der Führer des Volkes, der Fahnenträger der deutschen Jugend, Adolf Hitler, Heil! Heil! Heil!
Wir waren beide nicht im Gedränge.
Neither of us were in the throng. We kept to the sides. We only saw the school children marching along Unter den Linden, coming back from the Lustgarten.
Dafür sahen wir Dr. Goebbels an uns
But we did see
vorbeifahren.
Dr. Goebbels driving past.
Auf dem Flugplatz empfangen wir die
At the airfield, we welcomed the delegations of workers from the entire Reich who had arrived in Berlin by aeroplane.
Mittags sind sie beim Führer zum Essen eingeladen.
They were invited to have lunch with the Führer.
Den ganzen Nachmittag marschierten
All
Arbeiter,
afternoon, workers, office staff, civil servants marched to Tempelhof Field in columns. The trade unions and the Marxists marched with them.
In den Betrieben wurden sie durch
The factories forced them to go, checking their names against lists. Anyone who refused ran the risk of losing their job.
Die Nazi-Obleute haben kontrolliert, ob jeder angetreten war.
Nazi representatives checked whether everyone was present.
Unterwegs haben sich viele
Lots of people absconded along the way. Some went to buy cigarettes, others suddenly developed a weak bladder.
Auf dem Tempelhofer Feld verschwanden noch mehr Arbeiter.
Yet more workers disappeared on the Tempelhof field.
Dort haben überhaupt viele...
Many who stayed grumbled because they had to stand around for hours in the dust and heat.
De officielle personer havde indtaget deres
The
pladser.
VIPs and officials were standing on a large platform. The arrival of the Reichschancellor hardly made an impression, at least as viewed from the platform. I didn't even notice Mr. Hitler's presence until he was standing 10 meters away from me.
Arbeit ist in keiner Form eine Schande, sondern der höchste Adel für jeden, der durch sie und mit ihr getreulich mithilft am Aufbau des gemeinsamen Lebens und damit beiträgt zur Erhaltung der Nation.
Rigskansleren talte i mere end en time.
The Reichschancellor spoke for a little over an hour without making that much of an impression. When the high point of the festival came, the masses were too tired.
Ein freies deutsches Volk in einem starken deutschen Reich.
On the morning of May 2nd, I called the trade union headquarters but got no response. I then tried the metalworkers union. The phone rang, but there was no answer. I then tried the main union building, and the same thing there. 15 minutes later, I was standing outside the trade union headquarters. It was surrounded on 3 sides by Nazi military. The staff and administrative documents were being loaded onto police trucks.
Wir mussten einen Lastwagen besteigen, der uns
We were forced to board a truck which took us to Parochialstraße.
Hier wurden wir festgehalten.
We were detained there and subjected to a barrage of defamatory comments. For hours, members of the public poured into the building to gawp at us and make their Nazi comments.
Habt ihr das Schwein, den Leibhardt, schon gesehen?
Have you seen that pig Leibhardt? He's sitting over there, the filthy pig.
Among the 50 detainees are such prominent trade unionists as Leibhardt, Grassmann, and former labor minister Wissel.
Mit Erna im Zoo.
Erna and I went to the zoo.
Nett hat man dort alles
Everything has been
umgebaut.
very nicely redesigned. We particularly enjoyed the smaller animals, but also Roland the elephant seal, who this time was sunning himself on the rocks in all his vast magnificence.
Mit Trude zusammen kaufte ich mir die
I
SA-Uniform.
went to buy an SA uniform with Trude. It cost around 60 Reichsmarks.
Auch bekam ich heute Nachmittag endlich
This afternoon,
die Quittung.
I also got my NSDAP membership card, at long last. That cost 8 Reichsmarks.
Und ich erwarb von Schmidt eine
And I got a Parabellum pistol from Schmidt, 7.65 caliber. In total, I've spent more than 90 Reichsmarks today.
Für den 10. Mai hat der Büchereiausschuss...
The Library Committee has planned an auto da fe for the 10th of May. Several hundred books from around 20 authors are to be burned on the square in front of the State Theatre.
Unter den Autoren befinden sich...
The authors include Heinrich Mann, Feuchtwanger, Gläser, Stefan and Arnold Zweig. Mainly Jews.
Aus unserem Verlag,
From our publishing house, Shalom Asch, Döblin, Beer Hoffmann, Schnitzler.
schwarze und weiße Listen.
Blacklists and whitelists. The bookstores have them too. Where will it end? Berlin, 1933. In January, the National Socialists under Adolf Hitler come to power, along with the German National People's Party under Alfred Hugenberg. In February, the Reichstag building goes up in flames in an arson attack allegedly by communists. There is no proof, but preparations are underway for a trial. Members of the Communist Party are arrested. Social Democrat and Catholic Centre Party followers are threatened and persecuted. Jews are barred from certain professions. The streets are dominated by swastika flags and military-style marches. The police and civil service are being purged. The press, radio, film, and theatre are censored. Books are blacklisted and about to be burned.
Depuis l'après-midi, des camions à
Since the afternoon, open trucks loaded with books have been bringing in whatever could be found in municipal libraries and private collections across the city.
Des étudiants agitent des drapeaux.
Students are waving flags and singing Nazi songs together.
Środek placu ogrodzony sznurami patrolował.
The police were patrolling the cordoned-off square. In the middle was a pyre.
Na specjalnym podium.
On a specially erected platform were spotlights, film cameras, and microphones.
Oczywiście i dachy, i okna.
The roofs and windows of the surrounding buildings were full of spectators. The mood was a cheerful one. It is, after all, springtime.
Hier ist der Deutschlandsender. Wir befinden uns auf dem Opernplatz unter den Linden Berlins. Die Deutsche Studentenschaft Kreis 10 verbrennt zur Stunde Schriften und Bücher der Unmoral und Zersetzung.
Pochód wkracza i rozmieszcza się na
Students surrounded the pile of wood and threw their flaming torches onto it. The music continued to play. Then 20 students stepped forward. Each had a book in his hand, and as they threw it into the flames, they each shouted out the same slogan.
Ich übergebe dem Feuer die Schrift von Karl Marx und Kautsky gegen Dekadenz und moralischen Verfall, für Zucht und Sitte in Familie und Staat. übergebe dem Feuer die Schriften der Schule Sigmund Freud. Gegen Frechheit und Anmaßung! Für Achtung und Ehrfurcht vor dem unsterblichen deutschen Volksgeist! Verschlinge Flamme auf die Schriften der Tucholsky und Ossietzky!
The white pages of the books opened up and fluttered around like birds, illuminated by the flames. A great sadness seized my heart. I grieved for the books as dying objects. I grieved for the people that was bringing this shame down upon itself. I was ashamed to be witnessing this ignominy as a gawping foreigner. Gradually, the fire burnt out. The fire brigade helped extinguish the flames with water, and the ashes turned to mud.
Dienst im Staatskrankenhaus.
On duty at the state hospital. First, a police prisoner with a seizure, probable renal bleeding of the left kidney. In the women's outpatient clinic was a woman who had supposedly collapsed.
Am Abend war Trude bei mir.
In the evening, Trude came to see me, sweet and kind as ever, but a change has taken place in her. She's now constantly pushing for us to get engaged. She's rather forward and presumptuous. I don't know what's got into the girl.
The Germans are celebrating Mother's Day. This year it is intended as a tribute to families with many children. The National Socialist Movement foresees no other task for women than to be mothers. The party wants German women to have long hair and refrain from powdering their faces, painting their lips, and smoking in bars and restaurants.
At a conference for state education ministers in Berlin on the 9th of May, Reich Minister of the Interior, Dr. Frick, outlined the basic principles for educating youth in the Third Reich. Racial hygiene must, he said, be an integral part of the curriculum. The mixing of German blood with that of other races, in particular with Jews and colored races, must be avoided at all costs.
Frau Weber, Haarfarbe P. Herr Weber, Haarfarbe Q. Haarform 15.
Meine lieben Kinder.
My dear children,
Werner and
Emmy are still in police custody. Neither of them has even been interrogated yet, so there seems to be nothing we can do. I go to the police headquarters every 3 days, but have still not received permission to talk to them. Neither of them has done anything wrong. And if they are locking Werner up because he is Jewish and because he used to be politically active, that is outrageous enough. But what has his wife done? Surely no one can have any interest in destroying our family.
Als Ossietzky uns auf dem menschenleeren Hof des
As Ossietzky walked towards us across the empty courtyard of Sonnenburg concentration camp, his arms were hanging stiffly from his shoulders as if lifeless.
Das Gesicht war unverletzt.
His face was unscathed, but his expression was heart-rending. During our brief conversation, it remained rigid and deathly serious. His response to the hesitant question, "How are things?" was an almost soundless, tolerable, for the moment.
Meine liebste Mordi.
My dearest Mordi.
Vielen Dank für deine Karte.
Thank you very much for your card, which I was very happy to receive. I am relieved to learn that our daughter has come to terms with the difficult circumstances.
Nächsten Sonntag ist Pfingsten.
Next Sunday is Pentecost.
Ihr werdet einsam sein.
You will be alone together. I am with you both in my thoughts. I remain, as ever, your Karl.
Abends SA-Mann Brandt im Uferpalast.
In the evening, SA-Mann Brandt at the Uferpalast Cinema. Grand premiere. Hitler there too.
Heil Hitler! SA-Mann Brandt gratuliert dem Hitlerjungen Erich Lohner zu seinem 16. Geburtstag. Sieg heil!
Mir?
There's too much talking in the film. It must be edited down.
Ui. Mutter, unser Hitler. Schau.
Oh, schön.
Heute war Sturmabend.
Sturm evening.
Wir versammelten uns erst
First we all got together in the Sturm pub, and then we marched to the music halls carrying the flag in front of us. The night revolved around singing and explanations of the 08 pistol and 98 rifle. It ended at 11:30.
Ich saß da noch mit Trude bei Zimmermann.
Trude and I went on to Zimmerman's. We were together until 3 in the morning. It was already getting light outside.
Die SPD im ganzen Reich verboten.
The Social Democratic Party has been banned throughout the Reich. In Bavaria, members of parliament from the Bavarian People's Party have been arrested. Persecution of Centre Party members across southern Germany.
Sozialdemokratische Abgeordnete.
Numerous Social Democrat MPs and functionaries have been arrested.
Am Mittwoch, den 21. Juni.
On Wednesday, the 21st of June, our house was searched and occupied by the SA.
Die Haussuchung nahm
The search was conducted by 20 to 30 SA men.
Die SA-Leute hatten sich sofort
The
vor das
SA men
Telefon
immediately
gestellt.
positioned themselves in front of the telephone so that nobody could call for help.
Sie haben meinen Mann die Treppe
They pushed my husband down the stairs, kicked him, and threatened him at gunpoint.
Ich wurde zum SA-Sturmlokal.
I was taken to the SA Sturm pub Demut in Elisabethstrasse. We were received with jeering and the first blows. We were then forced to walk up the wooden stairs to the hayloft, accompanied by kicks and blows.
Wir erhielten der Reihe nach 30 bis
One
50
after another, we each received 30 or 40 blows with rubber truncheons, steel rods, and other objects. In between, the SA men punched us with their fists. Some of us dropped to the floor, unconscious.
Mein Schwager Anton Schmaus.
My brother-in-law, Anton Schmaus, who they also came to arrest, resisted and fired several shots at his attackers, hitting 4 of the SA men. He turned himself in at the police station.
In Berlin-Köpenick wurden bei Ausübung ihres Dienstes die 3 SA-Männer Gleuel, Appel und Klein von einem Sozialdemokraten erschossen. An der Mordstelle häufen sich die Blumen und stehen die Menschen in stillem Gedenken.
Im Polizeirevier wurde aus einer Menge von
At the police station, a shot was fired from within a group of SA men, which seriously injured Anton Schmaus. Schmaus's father hung himself, doubtless fearing the consequences of his son's crime.
Die zum Aufhängen verwendete Wäscheleine.
The washing line used in the suicide had been cut with a knife. A bloody jacket was lying in the kitchen.
Nach dem Bericht der SA
According to the SA report, the dead man had caused his own injuries in a fit of raving madness.
Im Beisein von Reichsminister Dr. Goebbels fand eine ergreifende Totenfeier statt.
Vom SA-Mann Paul Scherer wurde ein
SA-man Paul Scherer observed a sack floating in the Dahmer. It was pulled to the riverbank. Inside it was the contorted corpse of a man.
Der Oberkörper zeigte
There were many injuries to his upper body. The corpse is believed to be that of Social Democrat MP Johannes Stelling, formerly State Minister of Mecklenburg-West Pomerania. He had been reported missing. He had allegedly been taken away by SA men for questioning early in the morning.
Trotz aller politischer Wirrnisse bleibt uns doch
In
Gott
spite of all the political upheavals, we're blessed by God. How rich is the harvest he bestows upon us.
Frucht auf Frucht reift heran.
Fruit is ripening all around us, delighting our palate.
Erdbeeren habe ich jetzt jeden Tag beinahe ein Pfund.
I've been buying almost a pound of strawberries every day.
Die Deutschnationale Front,
The German National Front, has dissolved itself. All its members have joined the NSDAP.
Reichsminister Hugenberg ist zurückgetreten.
Reichsminister Hugenberg has resigned.
Niemand weint. Hugenbergs Rücktritt.
No one sheds a tear. Hugenberg resigns once and for all. The boss is very good to me. I'm getting Hugenberg's official residence. Fantastic.
Die letzte Kassensprechstunde. Ich habe tapfer
My surgery
durchgehalten.
was open to the public for the last time. I put a brave face on it.
Meine Wohnung gleicht einem
My flat looks like a garden in full bloom. My farewell bouquets.
Wie das ist, sein eigenes Begräbnis zu erleben.
It's like experiencing my own funeral. My assistant is beside herself with sorrow. I have closed my patient's register for the last time.
Jetzt sind Werner und Emmy aus
Werner
der
and Emmy have now been released from so-called protective custody and placed in investigative custody in Moabit. Werner thinks they could be there for months. He's been questioned only once and not at all thoroughly. I don't know whether Emmy has been questioned at all. It's not certain whether they'll be charged with anything.
Erna-Kind ist zur Fahnenweihe der
My little Erna has been invited to the flag consecration of the National Socialist Factory Cell Organization. Although she isn't a member, she wants to go along with her colleague. She left the house dressed up very nicely.
Ich gönne dem Mädel herzlich.
I certainly don't begrudge the girl this nice change of scene.
Zu Hause. Magda da.
I'm pleased. At home, with Magda, I give her the keys to our new home.
Sie ist sehr glücklich.
She's very happy. The furniture isn't right.
Das Propagandaministerium hat das
The
Scheinwerferlicht
propaganda
auf den
ministry
neuen
has shone its light on the new Inspector General for German Roadways, Fritz Todt.
Todt ist beauftragt worden.
Todt has been given the task of constructing tens of thousands of kilometers of roads and motorways.
Woher stammst du? Aus Friesenland. Und du, Kamerad? Aus Schlesien. Von Devotakan. Vom Schwarzwald. Aus Dresden. Von der Donau. Vom Rhein. Und von der Saar. Ein Volk. Ein Führer. Ein Reich.
Erna-Kind hatte nicht viel Freude an dem Fest.
My little Erna didn't really enjoy the party. She sat quietly at a table and watched the proceedings.
In den Sälen war es
The rooms were unbearably muggy. Otherwise, the revolution is boldly progressing.
Von Papen in Rom.
Von Papen in Rome.
Hat nun Konkordat
He has negotiated a concordat with the Vatican. Checkmate for the Centre Party.
Der Reichskanzler hätte es noch vor kurzer
Until
Zeit
recently, the Reich Chancellor would not have thought it possible that the Vatican would be ready to commit the bishops to our state.
Es wäre zweifellos
It would undoubtedly represent wholehearted recognition of the current regime.
Die Meinung, dass sich bis zum Herbst die Lage der Juden
There's
weiter
general
verschlechtert
agreement
hat.
here that the situation for the Jews will get worse by autumn. We are convinced that one profession after the next will be denied to us. Civil servants have been strictly forbidden to buy goods from Jews, and all Christian raw materials suppliers have been forbidden to sell to Jews. Mr. Goebbels has asserted on the radio that he will not rest until the last Jew has gone. But where to? Where to?
Mein Mann muss nun auch weg vom Krankenhaus.
My husband has also had to leave the hospital.
Ich spüre, wie ihm
I know how much he misses his work there.
Das tut mir noch mehr weh.
It hurts me more than my own loss.
Die Kassenpatienten kommen nun täglich zu mir.
Patients are coming to me every day, asking where they should go. I advise them as best I can. I give them medicine from my own medicine chest. But I can't write sick notes for them. And they want these all the time, so that they won't have to go to meetings or after work gatherings.
Ich darf nicht helfen.
But I'm not in a position to help them.
Ich habe unsere Familiengrabstätte besucht.
I visited our family burial plot. 2 heavy bronze chains have been stolen from it.
Die marmornen Gedenksteine.
The marble gravestones have been smeared with swastikas.
Gestern erreichte ein SA-Mann durch
Yesterday, an SA man repeatedly rang the doorbell, wanting me to buy a pamphlet from him called The Goals and Purpose of National Socialism, the 25 Points, What Does Our Führer Want? The man was very pushy and I couldn't get rid of him. I had to buy one.
Ich werde zum 1. August als Polizeimedizinassessor.
On August 1st, I begin work as a police medical assessor in Recklinghausen. Hurrah, hurrah.
Die arme Trude war sehr bestürzt.
Poor Trude was very upset and sad when she heard about it.
Viele Konferenzen. Nachmittags.
Lots of meetings, discussions with the boss in the afternoon.
Die Macht ganz uns.
Power is in our hands. We dictate the pace.
Die Reichsregierung hat das folgende Gesetz beschlossen.
The Reich government has passed the following law. First, the National Socialist German Workers' Party is the only political party in Germany. Second, maintaining any other political party or founding any new political party is punishable with prison of up to 3 years or with jail from 6 months to 3 years.
Am 30. Januar sind in Deutschland die Würfel gefallen. Und ich glaube nicht, dass die Gegner, die damals mochten, heute auch noch lachen.
Liebste Mordi, hoffentlich geht es dir gut.
Dearest Mordi, I hope you're well. I have nothing to report. I'm well. Please send me 3 stamps for 12 pfennigs each. Say hello to our baby.
Ossietzky war krank.
Ossietzky was sick. The camp commanders wouldn't allow him to be examined. He received a postcard from his daughter in England that suggested she was happy not to be in Germany anymore.
Darauf wurde Ossietzky in
As a result, Ossietzky was taken to the guardhouse and brutally beaten by squadron leader Adrian for bringing his daughter up badly.
Heute habe ich zum letzten Mal Dienst im Krankenhaus gemacht.
Today I was on duty in the hospital for the last time. Now I just have to say my goodbyes.
Am Abend gegen 10 Uhr wollte ich mich von Trude verabschieden.
In the evening at about 10, I wanted to say farewell to Trude, but she didn't want to leave. We spent our happiest, most passionate night together for a long time.
Morgens ging es zur Ackerstraße.
In the morning, I took her to Ackerstraße. Trude got out of the car after giving me one last kiss. She was sobbing and walked away from me slowly.
Ich gab ihr noch einen Rat.
I gave her one piece of advice.
Wirf dich nicht an Männer hin.
Don't throw yourself at men who are not worthy of you.
Meine Leute sind fleißig und
My
akkurat.
staff are hardworking and meticulous. We can be very satisfied with them. All the departments are working magnificently.
Rundfunk gereinigt.
Broadcasting has been purged.
Der Direktor der Reichsrundfunkgesellschaft, Reichssendeleiter, Parteigenosse Eugen Hadamowski hält eine Ansprache im Sportpalast Berlin mit den letzten Vorgängen, die sich innerhalb der Funkhäuser und um den Rundfunk herum abgespielt haben, endet die demokratische Epoche des Rundfunks. Für uns ist kurz gesagt der Rundfunk das Heiligtum unseres Volkes und er soll das braune Haus deutschen Geistes werden. Bravo!
Die sozialdemokratischen Führer Ebert
The Social Democrat leaders Ebert and Heilmann and the leading radio functionaries Director General Flesch, Alfred Braun and Dr. Magnus were taken to Oranienburg concentration camp.
Sie wurden gezwungen, sich ihrer Kleider zu
They were forced to take their clothes off in front of a crowd of rowdy SA men. The 6 men then had their heads shaved bare, although they left Ebert with a circle of hair in order to make him look especially ridiculous.
Funkausstellung eröffnet. Großer, würdiger Akt.
Opened the radio exhibition, a grand, befitting ceremony. I visited the exhibition.
Man ist erschüttert über die Entwicklung der Technik.
The technological developments are astonishing. Tried out new radio equipment.
Als Erna gestern Mittag heimkam...
When Anna came home yesterday at lunchtime, she brought very sad news. 39 members of staff are losing their jobs as of the 1st of October. Of course, the mood was awful.
Umso mehr begrüßte mein Mädel...
She was therefore all the more excited about the mystery moonlit boat trip that her office organized. The presence of every staff member was checked on the way there and the way back.
1,5 Stunden vor Abfahrt...
1.5 hours before departure, we found all the seats already taken. Anna's superior got folding chairs for us. We went upriver.
Plötzlich flammte die Beleuchtung.
Suddenly, the lights of an idyllically situated inn appeared. The night proceeded without incident, with coffee, beer, and dancing.
Ich wagte sogar ein Walzer mit
I even ventured a waltz with my little Anna, but it's hard to get her moving around in a circle. She doesn't really like to dance, because she is rather ungainly.
Nach Nürnberg.
To Nuremberg, visited Luitpoldhain, the hall, the Zeppelin field.
Alles groß aufgebaut. Aber die Organisation...
Everything is built on a grand scale, but the organization doesn't seem to be working properly.
Wilde Frauen wollen den Führer hören.
Raving women want to hear the Führer speak. Vast crowds in the city, impossible to get through.
Ich flüchte ins Hotel und
I
schreibe
flee to my hotel and rewrite my speech. I tone down the content of the Jewish question for foreign policy reasons.
Es lebe unser deutsches Reich! Sieg heil!
Eröffnung Kongress.
Party Congress opened.
Mein Führer, herzlichst willkommen in dieser urdeutschen Stadt.
Hess redet gut.
Hess spoke well.
Ich eröffne den Kongress des 5. Reichsparteitages der NSDAP. Ich eröffne den Kongress des Sieges.
Alles sehr eindrucksvoll.
All very impressive.
Henry Mann spoke of the conversation he had had with the Chancellor. Hitler is a fanatic on the Jewish problem. He has no conception of international relations. He considers himself a German messiah.
Die amtlichen Filme vom diesjährigen Nürnberger
The
Parteitag.
official films of this year's Nuremberg Party rally will be made by Leni Riefenstahl. They say she has won Hitler's favor.
Die Festklänge von Nürnberg sind verklungen.
The celebratory sounds of Nuremberg have faded away. The SA members in Erna's office have been talking about their experiences. Every participant had to pay for the trip themselves. Food was provided, as was accommodation on beds of straw.
Todmüde kehrten fast
Almost
alle
all
heim.
of them returned home dead tired and with aching limbs from all the endless standing still or marching.
Wir hatten in Oranienburg unseren zweiten
We
Tod.
have had our second death here in Oranienburg. A 31-year-old worker called Sens from Zerbst. I can bear witness that this athletically strong, healthy worker was beaten to death by Sturmbannführer Krüger and 2 other SA men with 3 rubber truncheons.
Mein Mann wurde am 8. September in das
On September
Konzentrationslager
the 8th, my
Oranienburg
husband was moved to Oranienburg concentration camp.
Der Reichstagsbrandprozess hat begonnen.
The Reichstag fire trial has begun. If you didn't know anything about it, you'd think that a few idiots had decided to play with fire for recognition or God knows what other motive.
Kein Mensch von einigem Verstand.
Nobody with any sense, whatever their opinion of the Communist Party, could possibly believe that those men would do anything that insane.
Es sind aus der Untersuchungshaft vorgeführt. Die Angeklagten von der Lübbe, Maurer, Marinus. Der Angestellte Ernst Torgler, früher Mitglied des Reichstages. Der Schriftsteller Georgi Dimitrov, der Student Dragoy Popov, der Schuhmacher Wassil Kanev.
Ich beschuldige die Angeklagten, es
I accuse the defendants of jointly A. undertaking to change the constitution of the German Reich through violent force, and B. deliberately setting the Reichstag building on fire.
Torgler looked ghastly, a greeny grey prison pallor on his face. He was tense, scared, a nervous wreck. The Bulgarians looked wiry, tough, indifferent. Van der Lubbe was one of the most awful sights I have ever witnessed in a human being. He sat there motionless, his head and hands hanging down between his knees, either in a trance or doped. He seemed to be slobbering at the mouth.
Dr. Todd führte aus,
Dr. Todd explained that construction work was to begin on 2 motorways. Each would be 100 kilometers long. The Reich Chancellor expressed that the section from Frankfurt am Main to Heidelberg must be completed quickly. The Reichswehr, he said, was also gradually beginning to understand the importance of the motorways.
720 Arbeiter angetreten, auf Ihren Befehl Arbeit beginnen. Achtung! Achtung! Es übergibt jetzt der Vorsitzende des Vorstandes der Reichsautobahnen, Dr. Dornmüller, dem Führer einen Spaten. Schutz und Brauch unseres Vaterlands. Wir sind mit dem Mikrofon nach Oranienburg hinausgewandert und wollen nun versuchen, Ihnen und der Welt die Wahrheit
ein Spiegelbild des Lebens aller Vorgänge im dortigen Konzentrationslager zu Gehör zu bringen.
Wir haben jetzt die Pflicht und die Aufgabe, unseren Hörerinnen und Hörern und der ganzen Welt zu beweisen, dass wir Nationalsozialisten nichts verheimlichen und nichts vertuscheln und beschönigen.
In diesem Konzentrationslager in Oranienburg befinden sich prominente Führer der SPD und KPD-Funktionäre.
Besonders stark fühlte
Sturmbannführer Krüger from Trebin felt particularly big and strong.
Andrehen zum Arbeitsdienst!
When visitors came and he had us parade in front of them. Like a puffed-up animal trainer from a minor traveling circus, he would stalk around the camp, summoning all the prominent prisoners and presenting them to the visitors.
Wir befinden uns in der Essenausgabe. Wir haben hier einen großen Kessel. In dem Kessel viele Liter Essen. Darüber ist ein Tisch mit großen Broten. Und nach der Größe zu urteilen, kann jeder schon allein an dem Brot satt werden. Der Lagerkommandant steht neben mir. Und wir wollen ihn nun bitten, einen Häftling heranzuholen, damit er Ihnen, Hörerinnen und Hörer der Welt, erklären kann, wie er hier verpflegt wird. Kommen Sie mal her. Wie heißen Sie? Schulze. Sind Sie Kommunist gewesen? Wolf. Hier, was haben Sie jetzt für eine Essenssuppe hier? Erbsensuppe. Erbsensuppe. Ist das ohne oder mit Einlage? Mit Speck? Speck. Werden Sie davon satt? Wolf. Was meinen Sie wohl, was wir Nationalsozialisten zu essen gekriegt hättet, wenn ihr Kommunisten am Ruder gewesen wärt? Wir können, soweit unser Auge schweift, nichts entdecken als Ordnung und Sauberkeit. Ich glaube, es ist wohl keiner hier unzufrieden, dem diese Erbsensuppe nicht schmecken sollte, mit Speckbeilage.
Mühsam erhielt Faustschläge in die Nieren.
Musa was punched in the kidneys. They kicked him, pulled his beard and his hair, and forced him to lap up dirty mopping water.
Blutüberströmt, erschöpft und ermattet.
Covered in blood, exhausted and worn down, Muzam was made to run up and down 4 flights of stairs 5 times. With all their might, they punched him, kicked him, and beat him with brooms.
Mir wird telefoniert, dass Deutschland die
I had a telephone call telling me that Germany was withdrawing from the Geneva Disarmament Conference and the League of Nations. A risky game.
Das Ausland spricht über den Austritt Deutschlands aus dem Völkerbund und der Abrüstungskommission zum Teil so, als ob damit eine außerordentlich gespannte Situation geschaffen werden könne.
Wir fordern gleiche Berechtigung und wir weigern uns, von vornherein uns mit dem Makel der Ehrlosigkeit behaften zu lassen.
Es weiß doch jeder Mensch, dass das deutsche Volk geschlossen hinter der nationalsozialistischen Regierung steht, Herr Minister.
I went today at 12 o'clock sharp to see Chancellor Hitler. I went up broad stairways guarded at every turn by Nazi soldiers with arms raised in fascist salute. Adolf Hitler appeared in a simple workaday suit. My impression was that he's very confident and itching for conflict.
Die Stimmung in Deutschland unter uns Juden ist
The mood among us Jews in Germany is terribly gloomy.
Nun sie aus dem Völkerbund
Now that the country has left the League of Nations, there is a fear that they won't restrain themselves at all anymore.
Plebiszit und Reichstagswahl.
Referendum and Reichstag elections on 12th of November.
Da Hitler ja immer
Hitler is always in need of new propaganda and wants the people to deliver him a new, purely National Socialist Reichstag.
Im Uferkino sahen wir den Film
We watched the film Hitler Junge Quecks at the Ufer Cinema.
Unsere Fahne flattert uns voran. Unsere Fahne ist die neue Zeit. Unsere Fahne...
Oh, was singst du denn da?
Ein vorzüglicher Film.
A splendid film, produced with great diplomatic finesse.
Sing doch die Nazis, Mensch. Du hast ja das gelernt, was?
Du lass doch den Jungen, ja, der wird es
Was heißt das so, wenn hier was gesungen wird? Dann singst du. Völker hört die Signale auf zum Letzten. Kannst du nicht singen, so? Da weg der beibringt, so. Völker, Entschuldigung.
Völker hört
die Signale auf zum Letzten. Gefecht.
Die Pausen wurden ausgefüllt mit
In
Sammlungen.
the intervals, little Hitler Youth boys collected money for winter relief.
Man ist oft bei völliger Ausgepumptheit und Leere.
Frequent feelings of despair, exhaustion, emptiness.
Der Reichstagsbrandprozess
At least the Reichstag arson trial has taken a surprising turn.
Auf der Tagesordnung steht heute die Vernehmung des Herrn Ministerpräsidenten und Reichstagspräsidenten Göring als Zeugen.
Göring took the stand. Huge, paunchy, his stomach protruding, his face sagging, pompous and yet a little nervous.
Ich habe mich selbstverständlich als Minister nicht auf die Spuren wie ein Detektiv zu begeben.
His voice was uncontrolled, his gestures melodramatic. Dimitrov interrupted him several times, and he flew into a rage.
Feindlich im deutschen Volk, dass Sie sich hier unverschämt benehmen und hierher gelaufen kommen, den Reichstag anstecken und dann hier mit dem deutschen Volk noch solche Frechheiten sich erlauben. Ich bin nicht hierher gekommen, um von Ihnen mich anklagen zu lassen. Sie sind in meinen Augen ein Gauner, der längst an den Galgen gehört.
Herr Ministerpräsident,
Dimitrov, with deadly sarcasm, was beginning to reveal so much that Göring shouted for him to stop.
haben Sie Angst vor dieser Frage schon, Herr Ministerpräsident?
Ich Angst haben, wenn Sie auf den Gericht laufen, die Gauner Sie!
Erich und Edith haben Werners besucht am letzten
Erich
Sprechtag.
and Edith visited Werner and Emmy, and they've written to me that there's been no progress. Soon they will have been in jail for 7 months. Emmy is stick thin.
Aus ihrer Firma ist der jüdische Teilhaber.
The Jewish partners left their company. It's a tax office that has been brought under government control. Of course, we will lose the printing contract. We've been printing their tax reports for years.
Es macht mir große Sorge, was werden soll.
I am very worried about what will happen when one customer after the other vanishes in the maelstrom, and Theo is left with nothing but a pile of rubble from our once thriving business.
Unser 10-jähriger Hochzeitstag.
Our 10th wedding anniversary. Our table is decorated with soft pink chrysanthemums, as it was in the old days.
Auf die nächsten 10 Jahre.
Yes, to the next 10 years, says my husband, and I feel my heart tremble.
Sie haben mir meine
They have taken away my calm certainty, the peace I felt in my own home. They have tried to debase me. They have taken my work, what I loved most from me.
Heute Morgen lagerten über dem
This morning, mist had settled over the woods and fields.
Mittags in Spandau.
At lunchtime in Spandau, I took the opportunity of listening to Hitler's speech in a small cafe.
Hitler wollte in den Siemenswerken sprechen.
Hitler was going to give a speech in the Siemens factory.
Vor einem Radiogeschäft steht
A crowd was standing outside a radio shop. I joined them. A big loudspeaker had been mounted above the door.
Die Übertragung begann mit
The broadcast began with the clattering of machines, the chugging of a locomotive, the noise of chains and hammers. After a while, the Führer's approach was announced by the sound of people shouting, Heil. That moment had an overwhelming, unprecedented drama. Then came a husky bass voice, as if his throat was sore from schnapps.
Volksgenossen und Genossinnen, meine deutschen Arbeiter. Wenn ich heute,
Unsure, faltering, sometimes raising his voice to a frightened screech before leveling off again, gasping for breath, wheezing.
spreche, dann habe ich mehr Recht dazu als irgendein anderer.
A terrible mix of fury, pleading, triumph, imploration and fanaticism.
Vielleicht wird manch unter Ihnen sein, der es mir nicht verzeihen kann, dass ich die marxistischen Parteien vernichtete. Aber mein Freund, ich habe die anderen genauso vernichtet. Sie sind
im Ganzen hochgradig abstoßend.
All in all, utterly repellent.
Es ist lächerlich, grauenvoll und rührend.
It's absurd, gruesome and raging all at once. I couldn't take it anymore and left the cafe.
Die Straßen waren so
The streets were almost empty. On some corners or above entrances where there were loudspeakers, groups of people huddled together. The expression on their faces was not one of enthusiasm, but a kind of dull gravity, like an intimation of danger.
Wahlsonntag.
Election Sunday.
Das Wahllokal ist in einer
The
Kneipe.
polling station is in a pub. Long queues outside.
An Tischen der Wahlvorstand.
The election committee members sit at tables, the men wearing National Socialist insignia. Behind the curtain, the people make their crosses. 2 meters away are 2 SA men.
The consul in Stuttgart reports that from 4 to 6 p.m., uniformed National Socialists called at the homes of non-voters, basically forcing them to go and vote. The same was reported by the consul in Breslau.
Anliegend in der BZ am Mittag.
I've attached a page from the afternoon newspaper with the final election results.
Wozu brauche ich da noch?
No need for me to comment.
Wahlbeteiligung bei über 90%.
Voter turnout of more than 90%. Around 10% dared to vote against.
Unter der sicheren Leitung der Filmschauspielerin
The self-assured direction of film actress Leni Riefenstahl has produced Victory of Faith, a document of our times. The images of the Führer being greeted by Germany's youth are staggering, the centerpiece and culmination of the film.
Meine deutsche Jugend, ihr, meine Jungs, ihr seid die lebenden Garanten. Ihr seid das lebende Deutschland der Zukunft. Ihr seid Blut von uns, Fleisch von uns, Geist von uns. Ihr seid unseres Volkes Weiterleben. Es lebe unser Deutschland und seine in euch liegende Zukunft. Deutschland heil!
Die Spannung über den Ausgang des Reichstagsprozesses.
The suspense over the outcome of the Reichstag trial has reached fever pitch.
Die Menschen holen sich die
People are reading reports about the trial in foreign newspapers. In the cafes, they are passed from hand to hand.
It seems barely possible that the court can convict Togler and the Bulgarians of complicity in the arson attack.
Im Namen des Reiches verkündige ich folgendes Urteil. Die Angeklagten Togler, Dimitrov, Popov und Panes werden freigesprochen.
Der Angeklagte van der Lubbe wird wegen Hochverrats in Tateinheit mit aufrührerischer Brandstiftung und versuchter einfacher Brandstiftung zum Tode und dauernden Verlust der bürgerlichen Ehrenrechte verurteilt.
Meine liebe Mordi.
My dear Mordi, I have enough underclothing and warm things. Don't send me any more. Just a few things to eat every now and again, and more often, some tobacco.
Alles Gute für das neue
All the
Jahr,
best for the new year, my child. May it see us all together again soon. I embrace you, your Karl.
Following international protests, Karl von Ossietzky was released from prison in 1936 and awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. 2 years later, isolated from the outside world, he died from the after effects of his imprisonment and torture. He was 48 years old. Erich Mühsam was murdered in Oranienburg concentration camp in 1934. He was 56 years old. Clara Brause died in 1936 at the age of 63. What became of her daughter Erna is unknown. Willy Lindenborn joins the Wehrmacht in 1936. He becomes a staff surgeon and fights in the Second World War. His last diary entry is from 1975. Emmy Schorlim is released from jail in 1934 and able to flee to England with her 2 children. Werner Schorlim is murdered in Buchenwald concentration camp in 1940. Betty Schorlim flees to Australia in 1939 and dies there in 1946. Berlin was planned to become the great metropolis Germania, capital of the Third Reich enduring for 1,000 years. After just 12 years, the city has been reduced to rubble.